Hey, it's officially 2024. Oh, I mean 2025. Yeah, go ahead. Things we're not gonna do, we're not gonna repeat, and things that we're just very, very excited to, level up from. Hey, they're telling me it's 2025 and I still haven't accepted it. But I guess it is. It's my first 2025 video of the year, so it's going to be a special one. I'm going to be talking about my 2025 ins and outs. There's a lot of things that I learned last year that I'm really excited to put into action this year. A lot of the stuff that I kind of listed are things that are generally helpful for like anywhere you are in life, but some are very specifically outdoor related. I wrote all of them down in my new journal, which I want to shout out my friend Tati. She's so sweet. She surprised me with this journal on as a New Year's gift. So I'm actually using it. It's not just sitting around, and I'm not going to forget anything because I have it all written down. So without further ado, let's talk about my 2025 ins and outs. My first out for 2025 is not starting something new because of age. Feeling like you are too old to do something because, I'm 25 or I'm 27 or I'm 46, so I can't learn to skateboard, or I can't learn to do this, I can't learn to do that. That is honestly the biggest lie you could possibly tell yourself. Something someone once told me is, you're only as old as you make yourself, or you're only as old as the standards you set for yourself. So for example, like, if you are like, oh my God, I'm too old to do that, or I wish I could run around like that, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, if you do have like medical impairments, makes sense, super fair. But if there is really nothing there and you can work to get to that point, then it is so possible to be able to start anything, literally anything at any age. I literally saw a video the other day of a 56-year-old man learning to backflip on skis, or on a snowboard technically. So if he could do that, you can literally do anything. Another one of my friends who it literally inspires me. So a little bit of backstory. I am a surf skater. It means that I ride a kind of skateboard called a surf skate, and it is a little bit different from a traditional skateboard. It's more about, feeling the vibes, pumping, going into the bowls, and, making those nice carves on hills and things like that. Don't know how to do a kickflip or do any, very difficult tricks. So this year I started getting in more into learning how to do tricks with my skateboard and dropping in and things like that. And I remember when I was first starting, it was really, really difficult, and technically I'm still quite a beginner. And I was like, this is impossible, there's no way, I should have learned as a kid. Everybody in the skate park is doing it is because they learned as a kid, and all of that stuff. And I literally had convinced myself that it was impossible for me to learn any skate tricks or to learn how to drop in because I did not learn as a kid, and I am currently over the age of 25, so I'm not in any space to learn how to do these things. And then I met this other friend. She has been super transformative to my progression in the sense that she, I think, is in her 40s, and she is learning to skate right now, and she is able to do things that I didn't know how to do, and she's basically inspired me to learn. And yeah, so age is literally just a number. That sounds so bad, but I mean it in the sense that you are only as old as you make yourself feel. You are only as old as you limit yourself to be, right? If you are like, you know what, I can learn something new no matter your age, then it opens up a world of opportunity, a world of fun, a world of so much more for you. So that is my first out of the year. Doesn't matter how old I am, doesn't matter what age you are, you can learn a new skill or try something new or say yes. My second 2025 out is not doing something because you don't know anyone else who does it and you don't want to be the only person in that space who looks like you doing that. So that is something that is super specific and probably makes a lot more sense to my POC brothers and sisters. But basically, when I was first getting into new spaces, whether it was cycling or softball, joining a softball team, or joining, learning the surf, that was a big one. I was very often the only Black woman, the only Muslim woman, and I'm not gonna lie, I was super intimidated to go into a space that I was not, there's other people who don't really look like me, and I am the very, 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 very tiny minority there. And that kind of held me back and my progression for a very long time. For example, I love softball. I actually grew up playing softball. My siblings play softball. It's a part of me, and I felt pretty confident in my skills. But I was too afraid to join a team because there was no one that looked like me. And I literally put it off for so many years. And then finally I was like, you know what, I really enjoy doing this. I want to make some new friends. I want to do something different. I want to shake my weekday up. And I ended up joining, and it was the best decision I ever made because, one, I did end up making a lot of friends, and also in the same time, a lot of times if you are the only person who looks like who you are, people tend to look out for you and make sure that you feel comfortable. Obviously, there'll be people who will try to discourage you from being in that space, but more often than not, there are people who really embrace you and bring you in and make you excited for being in that space. And in the end of the day, you get to enjoy this new hobby, or a hobby that you've already known how to do and just need a little bit of a team with you. My third 2024 out is comparing progress and succumbing to external pressure. And this is what I mean by that. I think skating is something that is so huge for me. This is something that was so huge for me in 2024 that I had to kind of unlearn and get out of that bad habit and feel confident about. And when I say skating, I mean skating at a skate park. So I've never, as I mentioned before, I've never been that kind of girl who goes to the skate park and does tricks. And this last year was the first year that I was kind of open to that. And something that really, really stressed me out was I met a lot of other people who were also learning tricks, but were definitely a few levels ahead of me. And my issue was I often compared their progression versus mine. And it doesn't matter how long it took them to learn a trick or how long it takes you to learn a trick. In the end of the day, different people have different progression styles, and the fact that you are even progressing, that is the best part of it all. Oftentimes, progression is hindered when you put that much pressure on progression. Progression is most successful in whatever you're learning, whether it's skating or whatever the case is, when you are genuinely having fun and it is something that you are enjoying. The second part of this is succumbing to pressure. So what I mean by succumbing to pressure is oftentimes there are people who love calling other people posers. So these are the kind of people at the skate park, and this is analogy. Skate park is an analogy, but you all know these people in a space where you're learning something or doing something, whether it's any kind of sport or any kind of hobby or even in academics. There will always be those people who learned that thing as a child or have reached a certain advanced level in whatever it is. In my case, it's skating, and they love calling people posers. If you can't do a kickflip, you are not a skater. If you can't do this, then you are whatever. If you are not at the level that we want you to be, then what's the point of you even doing it? Those are probably the worst kind of people for any kind of sport, hobby, whatever it is, when you are learning something new. So those kind of people are out. If anyone, one thing that I saw actually on an Instagram post, I wish I could shout her out because I don't remember her username, but she said, if you are learning something, you are not a poser, you are learning. So I feel like if you ever encounter any of those people, whether it be at the skate park or anywhere, if they're calling you a poser or they're calling someone else a poser, the best thing you could probably say is, if you are learning, you're not a poser, you're learning. At one point, you were learning too. So yeah, those people are out. We're not standing for that kind of behavior anymore in 2025. We are standing up for ourselves, we are learning, and they're posers for trying to prove something inside of them. That's weird. My fourth, or I think fifth, I think it's fourth. My fourth out of 2025 is new gear. If you are entering any kind of sport or even advancing, right, moving from intermediate to advanced or beginner to intermediate, and you want to get the next set of gear for that, do not buy new gear. There is so much good used gear, whether it is at a local thrift shop, whether it is through Facebook Marketplace, whether it's anywhere. Used gear is the way to go. When it comes to safety gear, definitely don't do used gear, get new gear. For example, if you're a backcountry skiing and you'd like to buy a beacon or something like that, obviously it's a life or death situation if your beacon does or doesn't work, if anything happens. So definitely go get a new beacon, don't buy a used one. And yes, it's expensive, I understand, but like, your safety is expensive and we want to make sure that you're safe. So if it has anything to do with safety, get new gear. But if it's like anything else, you do not need a new gear. If you want to get into cycling, get a nice bike that is used. More likely than not, there are so many options. Unless you are, you have like a specific need. For example, I am 5'1", I am super tiny, and oftentimes most bikes are not going to fit me. So I have to go for a custom bike, or I will have to buy like a new bike because a XX small bike is super rare. That kind of thing is fine. But if you are like mid-range size-wise, and there are options for you to get used gear, get used gear. Don't splurge, you don't need to do it. Skis, for example. You do not need to go and buy new skis or a new snowboard. You can definitely go get used gear, unless it's like a little gift to yourself or whatever, or you have the means, that's great. But if you are trying to get into a new sport, most of the time you're not even sure if you really, really want to be in that sport. So don't go for a brand new, like if you're getting a surfboard, don't go get a new surfboard. Get a surfboard that you want to, really get to try out, figure out if you even like surfing or whatever, and then go get the nice new surfboard once you've gotten to a certain level. But yeah, used gear is, in my opinion, even better than new gear because you don't even feel that self-conscious about scratching it up or whatever, and that will really help your progression, in my opinion. So out with new gear, in with used gear. My fifth out is unstylish gear, and please take this with a grain of salt. When I say unstylish gear, I mean gear that is very like dark toned, black, ugly, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. Any kind of gear that doesn't excite you about the sport that you're doing, that's out. If you are the type of person who's just motivated enough to get whatever gear and use whatever gear, power to you, and I love that for you. But what I've realized is a lot of companies do not care about how beautiful the gear is. They care more about the functionality, which is super fair and super awesome. But I'm the type of girl who likes style, and I care about how things look. And so I do prioritize efficiency and functionality of the product first, but I also really, really do prioritize stylish gear. And the reason why I say that is because if you have a piece that you really, really like, you are more likely to reach for it and be motivated to use it. So for example, if you buy a bike and it is the most beautiful bike you've ever seen, you're gonna want a bike everywhere. More likely than not, you're gonna be like, oh, well, I'm not doing anything, I kind of want to ride my bike. Or you walk past and you're like, wow, that thing is so beautiful, can't wait to ride it this Sunday, or whatever the case is, right? Or if it's like your, your surfboard, right? Like, let's say last session you had a really, really tough session and, you're not very motivated to go out you know, that following weekend. But then, you know, you walk past your board and your board is just beautiful, just sitting there, and you're like, you know what, I can give it another go. At least that's what works for me. It kind of motivates me to kind of want to go out and be out there a lot more. My skis, for example, are super colorful, so every time I see them, I just like get so excited and like, okay, so when am I going to use them next? When am I going to ski next? So yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a way to trick my mind to get me excited to go out and move when I kind of want to stay in bed or whatever the case is. So yeah, cute gear all the way in, and not cute, very boring, black, brown gear out. But yeah, and then my sixth and final out is supporting brands that don't support you or don't represent you. And this one I'm super passionate about, and I'm gonna try not to get too angsty about it. But I've realized that a lot of outdoor gear is focused for men. Like, they have not made this product with a woman in mind. That kind of shows through the like when you're using it, the functionality of it, the way that, for example, let's say you buy a running vest, and you'll realize that it's not made for a woman's body, it's not hugging all the right parts. Or, for example, you want to go buy skis, but the shortest height of skis that they make is a 168, when the average height of a woman in the world is 5'4". So it's just kind of like, okay, well, they're not looking out for women. Or like, for example, they make a wetsuit that does not fit curvy women. That takes out a huge demographic of women who are very curvy, and especially like, you know, more often than not in specific groups of color, women tend to be curvier, right? And so it's like, oh, you're kind of eliminating the possibility for these women to be able to use your product or have access to your product, and therefore have access to the activity, right? So I think something that I'm super passionate about is, in 2025, I am no longer going to buy things from brands that are not representing all women, or are not representing all POCs, or just not representing people that look like me, or the size of people who are like me. So I'm not really into that. So yeah, 2025, out with companies that don't represent me and don't represent my people. Okay, I feel like that was a lot. But yeah, those are all the outs. Hopefully I didn't shake things up too much. If I did, honestly, don't care. But yeah, anyway, so those are my outs. I'm really excited to get into my ins. I think that was the part that I enjoyed most when writing all of these down. So without further ado, I am gonna get into the ins. So my first in for 2025 is doing things alone. Oftentimes I feel like, actually I was having this conversation with one of my friends literally I think 2 days ago, and she was saying, I find that oftentimes I want to do something or start a new activity or have an experience, but my friends aren't really into it, so I just kind of drop it and move on. And I was literally telling her, why do you need your friends? You can literally just go alone, and you'll probably end up making friends where you end up going. Like, doing things alone is such a vibe, whether it's like going to a restaurant and eating alone because you've always wanted to try that restaurant, or if you want to get into a new hobby but your friends are not really into that, that's completely fine. Get into it. Like, I think a lot of times like people try to put like a taboo on doing things alone, but honestly, some of the coolest people that I have ever met, and the most like quietly confident and interesting people that I've ever met, always kind of move by, you know, their own kind of wind. If they want to go try something, they go ahead and try it. They don't wait on anyone else to do it. And yeah, doing things alone, so in for 2025. Get those experiences, enjoy that restaurant, do your thing. You don't need anybody else to do it. And if anyone wants to make you feel bad for it, they're really, really insecure about doing things alone themselves. So it's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them. So don't let anyone kind of like ruin your parade. Go do things alone if you want to try something new. The second in for 2025 is making certain friends for certain activities. A lot of times, I think a lot of us who grew up with a good amount of childhood friends, you're gonna end up being friends no matter where you guys are or what ends up going on or how different your interests are. So you feel like, you know, these like 2 friends that I had from childhood, I can do everything with. And then that's kind of the approach that you take when making a bunch of new friends as an adult. But that doesn't always work. Oftentimes you'll find that you guys do differ in certain places and they're not willing to stick it out with you, or they're not willing to do this thing that they're not interested in with you because obviously they don't have that rapport with you, right? They don't have that 15-year rapport or whatever. So as an adult, it's important that we learn how to make certain friends for certain things. For example, I have friends that I purely ski with. I have friends that I purely brunch with. I have friends that I purely hike with. And that is completely fine. Your friends for each one of the things that you enjoy doing with them don't have to be like all inclusive, or like, you know, they don't have to be into all of the things that you're into. In fact, it's super healthy because it allows them to go do their thing and get into their stuff and not feel obligated to do something that they're really not interested in or don't want to do. And then that way it will help you manage your expectation on what you can give to them and what they can give to you. And don't get me wrong, these friends can definitely become the kinds of friends that you do everything with and seek new experiences with, in the sense that, like, you know, your friend that you ski with all the time eventually becomes a friend that you confide in, and then they're the friend that end up, you know, doing, I don't know, learning to ice skate with, and then at that point, you know, you become closer and closer and closer and create that rapport, and they become closer and closer in your friend circle. That's completely normal as well. But oftentimes, like, not everybody is looking for that super deep connection or whatever. They're looking for companionship during a certain thing or a certain time or whatever that is. So just kind of understanding, like, making friends as an adult has like 3 specific layers, right? You have your core friends who you do everything with, you can do everything with, you confide in, it's super deep, it's kind of like almost like a brother-sister bond. Those are your best friends, right? Then you have your outer circle, which are your close friends, and you kind of like confide in them, you know, in a more kind of light way. And you are able to do like the majority of things with. And then you have your general friends, and those are the ones that are more categorized, right? Those are the friends that you go out with, those are the friends that you ski with, these are the friends that you do whatever with, right? So yeah, just kind of understanding that dynamic of friendship as an adult, and understanding that certain friends can be for certain things, and in a way managing your expectation around making friends and what capacity you guys have to give to each other is the best, I think, possible in for 2025. And just to piggyback off of that one, my third in is being open to making new friends. I think there's this huge mentality of no new friends, like my squad is my squad, like no need to whatever. I understand that mentality. I understand, especially if you have like a really good close friend group or whatever the case that is. But I feel like allowing new friendships to come in allows for open-mindedness. It allows for kind of helping you develop that social and emotional intelligence around just like society and people around you. And yeah, so making new friends is always a yes, and definitely a big in for 2025. And as I said, for my second in, they don't have to be your best friends, but just being open to that kind of exchange and friendship. My fourth in is sharing knowledge. So oftentimes, like, we are people, right? So we are constantly learning. We are constantly moving to new things. We are constantly, you know, just growing and, you know, accumulating experiences. And so I find that oftentimes once we learn that new thing or move to this new place or, read about something, we keep that information to ourselves. And so your friends and the people around you, if they want to go through that same experience, they have to do their own research or they have to ask on their own. And so I feel like for 2025, we should totally normalize kind of without asking, sharing knowledge, right? So like if you move to New York and there's a lot of things that you learned kind of the hard way, I think a good thing you could do is if your friend is also moving to New York or whatever, just sharing those tips with them, right? So that they are learning, right? Kind of making a kinder world in the sense that, yeah, it's a world where you have to figure everything out by yourself, but honestly, you don't. Okay, hey, sorry, my camera died. Not sure where we left off, but I think I got most of the point across, so I'm just gonna get right into it. So my fourth in for 2025 is being optimistic. Optimism is in, pessimism is out, and with optimism, definitely still be a good amount of realistic. But I think a little bit of delusion sprinkled in there is a good thing, because oftentimes to be optimistic in a really difficult situation, you do have to kind of believe in the impossible a little bit, and sometimes it does happen and it does come true. So I think optimism definitely in. I mean, if it's a rainy day, if you've dropped your coffee, if it's everything that you want to go one way is not turning out that way, still being optimistic is something to be happy and proud about, because in the end of the day, like, you manage your emotions. If you're going to tell your mind that this is a bad situation, that is what your mind is going to believe. If you tell yourself it's a good situation, even if everything went wrong that day, then your mind is going to think it's a decent situation. At the end of the day, you are bringing joy to your life and you're bringing joy to the people around you. So totally in for optimism. My final in for 2025 is saying yes. Saying yes to everything. If there's an experience that you don't know if you would be into, or something you've never tried before, whether it's a food or a hobby or a run or whatever it is, just saying yes. Just being down to do things. And oftentimes that's when you end up having the most fun and feeling like you have kind of discovered a little secret corner of something you never knew about. For example, one of my friends asked me to go see a show with them, and definitely not my style, definitely not the type of thing that I would normally be into, and I went and I ended up being absolutely obsessed. So yeah, just saying yes to new experiences, new friends, new foods, whatever it is, just say yes. And obviously, if it's about your safety, or if you genuinely don't want to do something, obviously say no. We're all about boundaries, not just last year, this year too. But if it's something that you're like, oh, I don't know if I would be into this, just say yes and try it out. And if you don't, just don't do it again. But yeah, those are my 2025 ins and outs for this year. I'm super excited to take on this year. These are definitely some things that I'm going to try my best to put into practice, especially the optimism one. I think I'm pretty much usually an optimistic person, but sometimes it gets away from me, and that's completely fine too. But that is really something that I want to push for myself a little bit more. I hope that some of these resonated with you. If not, great. If they did, great. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please go ahead and like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And if you're not subscribed already, like, what are you doing? But yeah, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.